Okay, so we've got the head plate all glued on to the headstock. Everything's looking really good. And so the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get our template. So this is the template that I made. It's just a 1/4 inch thick MDF, and I just kept drawing until I had something that I liked. And I went with this. You can buy all kinds of templates for Martin or Gibson style. But I just decided to make my own. And so let's get the camera down here and I'll show you what I'm trying to do. I've got a center line on my neck or in my fingerboard here that I'm just going to line up with the center line on my head plate or on my template here. And now this template can be used one of two ways. I could either put it back here behind the nut, or I can put it all the way up here against the fingerboard. It doesn't matter. We can go either way. So this time I'm just going to put it right up against the fingerboard so my center lines are right on top of each other. And I'm going to line up the center line down here. And so now I've got these two holes in my template, which is where two of the tuning machine holes go. And I'm just going to use a brad point drill bit, and I'm going to stick it into that hole, and I'm going to turn it a little bit and just make sure I poke a nice little hole that I'll be able to find once I take this off, and then I can drill those holes out, and we can screw on our template. So there we are. There are the two holes. They're nice and easy to see. I've got a little white pencil here. I'm just going to mark those just so I don't have to search for them later. So we're going to drill those out and screw on our head plate. So let me clamp this into a vise and we'll drill them out. Okay, so I just went ahead and I drilled those holes with the drill press. And I put a couple of screws in there. And so there's the head plate all down nicely on my template all down nicely on the head plate. And so the next thing we're going to do is move over to the bandsaw and just saw this fairly close so we can then shape the headstock. So I'm going to move over to the bandsaw and we'll do this. Okay, so there it is. That's relatively close. And now we can go over to the router table and route this where it's quite close. And then we can start doing some work on the headstock. So that's coming next. Okay, so the router table is set up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do part of this on camera and then I'll finish up the rest. But I've made a mark on the side of the, on the edge of the fingerboard here, which shows where the headstock goes to, where the beginning of the nut. So I'm just going to cut up to about that point. Then on this face here, I don't like going uphill like this against that grain, so I'm going to do nibble cuts to come down this side, and then I'll do the end grain on the end and just show you how I do that. And then I'll just turn off the camera and finish up the other side, and we'll go from there. So here we go. I've got a flush cut bit in the router, and so I'm going to make some noise here. Okay, so here is the little fixture that I built around my belt sander that I use to thickness my headstock. So here's our neck. I'm going to have to stick this board onto my head plate with some double-sided tape, and that will lift it up to the proper height to come through here and just get sanded down. So I imagine if you were to go build something like this, your board would be a different thickness. But the way I put this together, I've got one for a steel string, and I've got another one down here someplace, here it is, for a classical, or I guess any open headstock, open slotted headstock would work for that. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to double stick tape this to my head plate, and we'll go run it through here. So I'll be right back and we'll get started. Okay, so we're ready to start this. I'm going to be making a lot of noise. I'm going to have 2 separate vacuums going to try to keep the dust down. So bear with me on the noise, and here we go. So here it is. This is looking really nice. My thicknesses are all good. Now, one thing that I do, I don't know if anybody else does this, but most steel string headstocks are pretty much equal thickness all the way across. I don't do that. Reading Bob Benedetto's book, I make a lot of arch tops, and in Bob Benedetto's book, he talks about arch tops having a slightly tapered headstock, and so I just do that for all my steel string guitars and my arch tops. So I like the way it looks. So there's a little taper, a little thinner up here than it is here, and that's just the way I do it. So anyway, this is looking terrific. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and drill out the holes for the tuning machines. And then I'll do the inlay. Once I've got those holes in there, then I know exactly what room I have for the inlay to fit. Okay, so we're getting ready to drill the holes in our headstock. And I'll just show you what I've just done here. All I did was I took the headstock and I measured where the tuning holes are going to go. They're a 1/2 inch in from the edge, and they're 1 5/8 from each other along each side. So I've just marked all the holes. The 2 holes that I had drilled in the top to screw down the plate over the headstock when we did our last routing, I had to fill those, and I just filled them with a couple of pieces of dowel and just sharpened them up a little bit, stuck them in the hole, because if you're trying to use a brad point bit, you need to have a solid piece of wood there and not a hole for the brad point to catch into. So anyway, I'm going to go over to the drill press. I'm going to drill these holes, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so we're back, and here is the headstock. The holes are all drilled. One thing I forgot to mention is I use a drill bit that is 25/64. That's 1/64 bigger than 3/8. And the reason that I do that is because the next step we're going to do is we're going to use this bit here. And this bit is just a counterbore, and it just generates a small countersink around each of the holes that's 5/8 wide, and it uses a 3/8 pilot. So in order for that 3/8 pilot to go in, you can't drill a 3/8 hole. It just won't fit. So I make my holes 25/64 so that 3/8 pilot bit will go in there, and then we can cut out that little counterbore right around the holes. So I'm going to do that real quick, and I'll be back and show you what's going on with it. And you can see all the counterbores are done. The whole purpose of this is so that that washer around the string post fits right down in there, and then it doesn't damage the finish that's on the top of the headstock. That whole area, any cracks or waves or anything that want to generate from pushing down that washer, stop right there at the edge. So, and I like the way it looks. So anyway, that's why I do it. I got this idea from Charles Fox, and I thought it was a good one. Also, you can see there's a little burn where the my collar here, my stop collar, hits the top. I try not to push down so hard that this burn is real deep. But this is not a big deal at this stage because I'm about to go do an inlay in this, and I got to sand the inlay back. So the whole top is going to get sanded, and all those burn marks are going to just go away. So at this point, I'm ready to do the inlay. And I'm going to go get a couple of copies of the inlay that I want to do. One I'm going to glue down onto the headstock, and the other I'm going to glue to my pearl. And so I can start cutting things out, and we'll go from there. Anyway, I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so we're going to start doing the inlay here, and I've got 2 copies of my inlay. So this is my Phoenix bird here, and what I'm going to do is the bird's body, you know, the tummy, the breast area, the beak, the crest here, all of those I'm going to inlay with mother of pearl. This back set of wings here I'm going to inlay with green abalone shell. And this front set of wings here I'm going to inlay with pink abalone shell. So I'm going to go cut all these out and get them glued to the abalone shell and the mother of pearl so you can see how I do it, and then I'll start cutting pieces out. So I'll be back in a few minutes after I've got this cut. I'm just going to use an X-Acto knife and cut closely around all of these patterns here so that I can take each little piece and glue it down and then cut around it. So I'll be back in a few minutes and show you what I'm talking about. I've got the pieces of the bird's body cut out, and I've got just a scrap piece of mother of pearl here that I've used for other things before that's got plenty of material on it left, so that's what I'm going to use to cut out the bird's body. There's the belly of the bird, and here are all the other little pieces just laying around over here. And what I'm going to do, I've just cut a couple of small files, and I'm just going to hold this piece down with a couple of files while I reach over and get a little pipette full of super glue and just glue this down. And that's all there is to it. I just want all these pieces glued, not overlapping or anything, and just glued down. And now we'll get the next piece put on there. And I'm going to put it right over there. And I think I actually managed to set it down in some of the wet super glue, so that's going to help keep it down. So I'm going to just hold it in position here and make sure, yeah, it looks like it's got super glue all underneath it. So that's good. Now I'm going to take the beak and see if I can turn it at an angle where it kind of fits in there. Something like that. And it actually went directly into some of the super glue, so that's good. The glue's drying kind of slowly, so I'm just going to hold this down and this down and get a little more super glue put on that. That's all we're doing. Okay, that piece appears to be down nicely. Let me check on this one. Yeah, it's doing good. Okay, let's get another piece. I don't want to go spray this with accelerator right now because I've got all these tiny little pieces laying around and they'll blow all over the shop. And the only reason I know that is because I've done it before. Okay, I hope this is coming through all right. But I'm just letting glue seep underneath the paper. And here's my last piece. Let's kind of get it up in here. That's going nicely into that little puddle of glue I've got. So I'll hold that down on the other side. There. It's all down. So now I'll grab the accelerator. And I want to move my pipette well out of the way because when you spray accelerator near a pipette, it blocks up the pipette. Okay, so there it is. I'm going to let that dry for a minute. And then I can start cutting those pieces out. So that looks good. fact, I think that's dry enough. So let me get my, my little saw and a couple of other things, and I'll be right back and we'll start cutting. Okay, so we're back. So one reason I've got this little piece cut out here is so you can get a saw into it and hold your piece down and continue cutting. This is just a little jeweler's saw that I bought at a local jeweler supply store in Phoenix, actually. But I'm sure they're available all over the place. So anyway, this belly part of the bird is most conveniently located to start with. So I'm just going to put it right here. And this is a 00 blade. There are narrower blades and thicker blades. I've gotten to kind of like this one. And mother of pearl is very hard. So don't be surprised if you're new to this that you'll start breaking some blades. It just happens, and you just have to replace the blade and move on. So I want to cut as close as I can to the line. So you see, when I change directions, I keep the saw moving. If you don't and you turn the pearl, you'll break the blade. So I'm going to go around this edge, and I'm just going to keep going so you see how to turn a corner. So you start moving around that corner and keep the blade moving. If you don't, you're sure to break it. Just keep going. Now my paper's starting to lift a little bit here. So I'm going to try to hold it down with my fingernail. It But you can see we've successfully gotten around the corner and we're headed down the other side. Now if I leave a little bump on that end, I'm not going to worry about it because I'll file it back later. We're going to turn another corner here, same way. There we go, we're done. We're through that piece. So there it is. Now it's got a couple little bumps on it, so that's okay. We're going to file that back and see if we can't make it just as beautiful as we can. So anyway, there's one piece. We'll do our filing a little bit later, but I've just got a piece of wood here, triangular, cut off from cutting a headstock, and I've got some double-sided tape on it. So I'm just going to put this right there so it doesn't go anywhere. If you just leave it sitting around on a table, it slides around, it falls off, it gets lost. But this way holds on to everything. Now I'm just going to keep going. So I'm going to turn the camera off and keep working on this. And I'll be back in just a little bit. Okay, so I've been cutting these inlays, focusing mainly on the body of the bird here. So I'll show you what I've got. Here is the bird's body. And you can see that initial piece I cut, the breast here, the beak, the crest, and the back. And all of those came out really well, except I had a couple little bumps that I want to file on this one. So I want to show how I do that real quick. And I use one of these little pana vices. It's a little hobby vise. I bought this, oh gosh, many years ago. And I'm just going to take this piece, and you want to be sure that when you put a piece like this in, let me see if I can get the camera set better, that you just leave the tiniest little bit sticking out, because as you start filing it, you're very likely to break a tiny little piece like this, especially one this thin. So I'm just going to put that in there as deep as I can. try to get this at a better angle so you can see it. They're just a little bit sticking out, and there's the bump right there that I want to file. So I'm just going to grab one of these small files. It's just a little hobby set that I bought a long time ago. And just file here. I'm going to put on my magnifying glasses. And I just want to file that little bump down. And this is exactly the process that I use. If I find a little bump somewhere, I just take out one of these little files and try to get it down. And there's one more right there that I want to go after. Okay, I think that's about, yeah, that's starting to look pretty good. It may not look all that different, but at least some of the little irritating little bumps are gone. And so I'm just going to put it right back where it goes. So everything is on some double-sided tape and it doesn't move around. Now the one other thing is I'm ready now to start cutting the wings. And so here is my basic pattern. Let's see, there's a better view of it. So this front set of wings right here, and here is my set. So you can see that I've cut that set of wings out and I've glued them right onto this sheet of aballam. It's the same stuff I used for the rosette. And so I just used super glue and just glued it right down. And that's it. So now I'm just going to go back to what I was doing before. Now the one thing is this is a huge piece of aballam. There's no way I can cut all this out with this tiny little saw. So I'm just going to cut out this little section here so that I can use my small saw and cut out the pieces. So that's what I'm doing. You can see I've cut a bunch of these out using the same piece of aballam before. And so that's it. I'm just going to cut these out. Nothing's going to be different, so I'm not going to show the whole process for that. I'm just going to cut them out one at a time and stick them on my little double-sided tape board. And I'll be back when I've got those done. So I'll see you after a while. Okay, so we've continued cutting the wings out of the aballam for the bird. And you can see right here that there's the body that we showed you before, and then there are the front set of wings. And now we're going to cut out the back set of wings. So I've got that bit of paper cut out from my large sheet, and I'm just going to set it down here. Now you'll notice one thing that I've done. I have cut some holes in between the wings here, and I've done that because this is a pretty big flat piece of paper we're trying to glue down, and I want to give the glue a few places to run through the paper to glue this thing flat. The last thing we want is for this large flat piece of paper to be glued only on the edges and have the middle up, because as you start cutting through that, it'll start flopping around and tearing the paper. So I've got this ready to go, and I'm just going to hold it down with a couple of these small files. So There's a couple of places where it needs to be held down. And so I'm just going to start putting glue on here. Around the outside edge and then into those holes so the glue can spread in the middle of the paper as well as in from outside the edges. So we just want it to be glued down as flat as possible. So once we start cutting, everything stays down. And that's about it right there. So that looks pretty good. And we're just going to spray a little bit of accelerator on here. And let that harden. Then I'm just going to continue as I have been before. I'm just going to cut these out with my saw. And when I'm done with that, I'll come back and show you what it looks like. So I'll see you after a little bit. Okay, so we've got the bird cut out basically. So here's what it looks like. I just finished cutting out this back set of wings here. And so everything's looking pretty good. Now we're going to go and inlay these into the headstock of the guitar. I'm not going to worry about the tail yet because I've got to place the tail, and I'd rather have the body there, and I'd rather have the truss rod cover there, and then we can get the tail placed where we want it. But we'll deal with all that in a few minutes. So what I've got down here is the cutout of the body that I'm going to put on the headstock. And so this is the reason why I wanted to have the tuning machine holes all cut, because this is going to fit in there very tightly in between these two holes. And I want to get it at the right angle where I can get the tail to come through here. That may not be showing very well, but the tail's going to come right along through here. And so I just want to be sure that none of the parts of my bird are going to be in any of the holes made for the tuning machines. Anyway, that looks like about the right spot. So I've got a pipette here that's pretty full of super glue, and I'm just going to glue this whole thing down. Now I've made some holes up here in this section, and it's going to be kind of hard to get super glue under everything, but we're going to do our very best to do that. So I hope that's coming through okay on the camera. So that looks pretty good. I've got it pretty much where I want it. I'm going to spray this with accelerator and make sure it's all ready to go. And I'll try to get the camera placed in the best position, and I'll start cutting out the bird's body here, and we'll go from there. So I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so we're ready to start here. The first thing I want to do is check the depth of my bit, the depth of my cut, and make sure that it seems about right. So I don't know how well this is going to come out on the camera, but there's the part of the bird that I'm going to do first. This is the bird's belly. And so I'm just going to hold it flat on the base of my router and just move it over to the bit. And I can see that it's almost exactly right. I think that this mother of pearl is 60 thousandths thick, and the bit is set just perfectly to cut right at that depth. It may be a few thousandths proud, but that's a good thing. So I'm going to set the piece back there, and I'm going to hope that the lighting is right and that everything comes through. Okay, so there's a first cut. I'm going to get a small file and try to file some of this, some of the feathers and everything out of there, and we'll see what it looks like. What happens is as you cut this and you're cutting through layers of glue and paper and wood that's pretty hard, you get a buildup right on the edge of wood fibers and glue and crud. And it's pretty hard to really see just what you've been doing. So I'm going to go back in a little bit more now. Okay, so what I did on the first cut is I tried to go right down the middle and just kind of cut the very inside. And then the next cuts, I'm just trying to slowly widen it out a little bit. And let's see what we've got here. Some of that part seems to fit in relatively well. and then it gets too narrow up here. So let's just keep going. Try it again. We've still just kind of got to kind of widen. Oops, my paper came off the top, so that's actually okay. So I'm going to grab a pencil. So this is, I believe, about a 0.3 millimeter pencil. And I'm just going to kind of go around this edge here. Let's see if I can make a line that I can see. And I'll move that out of the way a bit and we'll try it again. Okay. We don't want to make it too terribly big because then the lines will all show, have big gaps. We don't want that. It's best when it just drops in like a puzzle piece, but it very seldom does that. Okay, so let's try it some more. Oops, have I got? Okay. Okay. It seems to be getting close, but it's not quite ready to drop in. Ah, there it goes. It's in. Okay, that's in there very nicely. Not a lot of gaps around it. That looks really good. And that's what every single one of these is going to be. It's all going to be a matter of you cut it, you come around, there's a couple of little pieces along the sides that don't fit, and you keep shaving on them, and you just keep working it until it drops. And you try not to make any of the cut too big so that you make gaps, but you're always going to have some gaps, so you can't worry too much about that. So anyway, this looks great so far. I'm going to keep doing exactly this, and every now and then I'll come back and show you how the progress is going until we get it all done. So I will see you after a little while. Okay, so I'm just about halfway through this inlay right now, and I just figured I'd give you a quick check-in of what it's looking like. You can see that I've got the cavities cut out for the entire body and this front set of wings here. And just to show you how these fit, so like here's the front, the largest wing, and it just pretty much pops right into the slot. So that's what they're all supposed to look like. So now I'm going to go get started on these back wings. They're bigger, but they're not much more difficult to inlay. So once I've got all that done, we'll check back in again. So I will see you in a little bit. So all of the pieces have been fit into their proper places here. And so let's take a look at what we've got. Everything is in. And so now I'm just going to go with this little pipette full of super glue and put super glue around every single piece that's in here. And some of them I might need to just hold in very well to be sure they don't move around. So we're just trying to get this glue in all of the cavities. So we want to make sure that none of our pieces will come out. And we're just going to glue everything down the very best we can. It's going to get kind of sloppy. And we're going to have little scraps of paper kind of all over the place. But this should look good when it's all done. So that's just about it. I've got glue over all of the individual pieces. And now I'm going to get some accelerator and spray it all over this. And now I'm going to wait. We're going to wait for just a little while, make sure this is all solidified very nicely. And then the next thing we got to do is sand. I want to get this section here completely done before I put in the tail, but that's going to be coming next. So we'll let this dry. It's feeling pretty good right now, but I want to just be sure we give it a few minutes, and then I'll come back and I'll sand this off, and then the actual inlay will start to pop out. So I'll be back in a few. So we've got this glue drying here, and it should be pretty much ready to go. Now I've got a sanding board. This is just some 150 grit sandpaper on one side and 220 on the other. So I'm just going to sand this back a little bit. And all that dark colored paper on the top of my pearl will get sanded away here. So I'm starting to get a little better. So that's starting to come down a little bit there. So there's still a pretty good bump there. So I'm going to vacuum that up just a little bit there. And you're just starting to see some of the colors that are showing up. But we've got more sanding to do. You can't see it quite as brilliantly as you'd like because there's still some white paper in between the pieces. So let's just keep going. Okay. Okay, that's definitely getting down better. All right, I'm going to turn it over for a little while. Try the 220 paper. See how that does. Okay, I'm going to blow some of that out a little bit. Just got some canned air here. And so, yeah, it's still got a bump kind of in the middle there. You can still see this mark from when we drilled the tuning machine holes. So we're not down to level just yet, but we're getting there. Slowly getting a little better. Okay, it's getting a lot clearer now, but we're not quite all the way through the glue yet. You can still see kind of a shadow of a lot of the super glue around the pearl. And one thing that I'm starting to be able to see here a little bit is like right there, there's a gap that I'm going to need to fill. And there's a little gap there that didn't get filled by the glue, and a couple little dots here and there where there's just a couple of tiny little gaps that we need to go in. We might need to dig it out a little bit with the X-Acto knife and just inject a little bit more super glue into some of those spots. But it's getting very close now. And there's going to be some more sanding to do, but this is a good time to go and start fitting that tail. I'm going to go and I think next I'm going to make the truss rod cover so we know exactly where that's going to be and how the tail of the bird is going to go into the truss rod cover. So we'll start putting that together next, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so I'm over here at my disc sander, And I've just finished shaping the truss rod cover, which is right here. And I've just got a little template that I use, and then I cut it out on the bandsaw. So I've got to do two things to this truss rod cover now to make it work. This is the same jig that I used to shape the front edge of the headstock template. I need to shape the front edge of the truss rod cover as well, so I'm going to do that real quick here. There we go. So that lets the truss rod just go right up to the back of the nut. The next thing I want to do is I want to chamfer these edges here so they're not just sharp up and down. So I'm just going to do that right here on the disc sander. So there we are. So that puts just a nice little chamfer edge to get rid of some of the noise. It puts just a nice little chamfer edge around the edges of the truss rod cover. So that's it. It's pretty much done. Now I'm going to have my inlay go into this a little bit. So we'll go back over to the headstock and we'll get this placed. So I'll be right back. Okay, so we've got the truss rod cover here, and it's just sitting there nicely. Just fits right nicely up against the back of the nut, and I've got it right down the center line there. Everything's looking really good. So I'm not going to go into detail about the rest of the inlay that I'm going to do. You've seen what at least my inlay techniques are for putting something onto the headstock. I'm going to go finish the rest of my inlay up, and I'll show it to you when we're done. And then we're going to move on to getting the neck carved. That's the next most important thing. So I will see you after a while. Okay, so we've got the inlay done here. Let's go down here and take a look. So there's the bird, and I've got the tail just coming down here and ending. And then here is the truss rod cover, and it's going to go right about there. So you can see how the tail just kind of comes into my little inlay on the cover, and all that does is just finish it off. So anyway, that's how I like to do it. I don't know a lot of people that do this, but every now and then you'll find somebody who does, and I just think it looks cool. So anyway, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, this little area here, right by the truss rod cover. I've got to clear out. So I'm just going to draw a couple of lines that come straight out from the slot that's already there. And I'm just going to scribe these lines really deep with an X-Acto knife, and then just start carving that out with a chisel. So I'll get started on this, and then I'll let you see what's going on. This is not a particularly complicated task, but it's one that most of us have to do. So anyway, I'll get started with that and show you updates as I get going. So anyway, I'll see you later. Okay, so let's take a look at this this area above the truss rod. I have used an X-Acto knife and just scribed a fairly deep scribe up, maybe 3/4 of an inch or so. Then I've got just a piece of binding that I'm going to cram in here and just stick in this slot. And that's just so I don't cram my chisel into the end of the truss rod. Sticking a nice sharp chisel against a piece of metal is a bad thing, if any of you are wondering about that. So I'm just carving this back. And usually if you get a nice deep slot carved, your the little feathers will break off where where you make your ledge here. So the deeper you go, that ledge should stay pretty straight. So that's all I'm doing. I'm just taking this down, letting the chisel stick into this piece of binding instead of my truss rod, and trying to make this as nice and straight as I can. That's all it is. And when I'm done with that, we're going to shape the neck. So I'll be back in a little bit. There it is. Here's the truss rod tool that just slides right in there. And everything is fine. And you can see the truss rod cover still covers everything up. So we're in good shape. So that's as far as that needs to go. And so we'll stop with that. So we'll start carving the neck next. Okay, so we're ready to start carving on the neck. And so the first thing I'm going to do, I've got these areas just next to the neck here that stick out kind of far. So I'm going to carve those off to the best of my ability with the bandsaw. And I just want to stay away from the fingerboard. I don't want to get any bandsaw marks on my nice binding there. So I want to just stay away from that. And then we're going to use the edge of the fingerboard here as the bearing edge, and then cut the rest off nice and flush with a router. So I'll show you doing this side because this side's close to the camera. The other side you can't see very well, so I'll just do that right afterwards. So anyway, I'm just going to set this down here. And I'm going to go start the vacuum, so that'll make a little noise, so I won't be able to talk much during this. But I'm just going to trim this off, and we'll go from there. So let me start the vacuum up. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that's not too bad. I'll turn off the camera and do the other side. Okay, so next thing we're going to do, we've thinned down the wood outside the fingerboard, and now we're going to come in and just route it even with the edge of the fingerboard. So the router, I'm going to make sure that it's completely set up so the level is just right, and that looks pretty good. So I've noticed that the grain is a little bit of an angle right here. So that means that doing it this way, I'm not going to start at this end and come straight down because that could open up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on this end and do my nibble cuts as we move forward. And actually, let me pause the video for a second. I need to take this bearing off of the top edge, so I'll be right back. The first thing I'm going to do is do nibble cuts down this side, and then we'll come back and do the other side. So let me go turn on my vacuum, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're over here at my whiteboard, and I want to show you a drawing of the cross-section of the neck before we start carving. And here is my little drawing here. This is also in my book, so it's explained a little more clearly there, but here is the fingerboard. This is 1/4 of an inch thick, okay? Here is the neck. This portion of the neck itself is 9/16, and the way that breaks down, here's your truss rod. That's 3/8. 3/8 deep cut into the mahogany. Then I'm leaving a 3/16 space here between the bottom of the truss rod and the edge of the board. So that's 6/16 plus 3/16 equals 9/16 thick. If this gets a little bit thinner, you can probably get away with that, but it can't get too much thinner. This distance has to stay over 1/8 of an inch to have any strength at all, and I like to leave it a little bit thicker than that. So that means that the total thickness between the top of the fingerboard and the back of the neck is 13/16. That's down by the nut. So those are important numbers to remember. And like I said, this is in my book. I'll look up what page that is and let you know. Okay, so I just looked up that page in my book. It's on page 119 in the book, where it's got that same drawing, only drawn a little bit better than the one I just showed you on the board. Okay, so here's the neck. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to just carve out a couple of grooves here, down here by the nut and up here by about the 10th fret or so. And here's the template that I use. And this just has 4 little arcs cut in it. This first one is an arc of 1 inch radius. And if you draw out the neck on a piece of paper, you'll find that if your nut width is 1 3/4 and the thickness of the neck at this point, or the thickness of the mahogany at this point, is 9/16, like I just mentioned, the radius of the back of the neck is going to be 1 inch right at that spot. So we're going to carve out a little groove here, and we're just going to use a regular file here. And I'm just going to start carving this groove until the groove matches that radius, and that's all there is to it. The other thing is that we need to be aware of this thickness. So this thickness here has to be 9/16. And if I look at my scale, or if I look at my measurement, it is just barely over 9/16 right now. So I don't want to make it any thinner at this stage. So we're just going for that curve of the arc. And if you're using a file for this, use the curved side of the file, not the flat side. If you use the flat side, it's often that one edge or the other is going to be much deeper than the other side, and you could end up getting deeper than you want to go without even knowing it. So use the curved side. And start carving. So you want to keep that radius at 1 inch. And keep checking. And one thing to notice, that wherever the template touches, that's where you need to carve away material. So it's getting down there. And you really don't want to get this carving to go down onto your fingerboard. It should be strictly on the mahogany, on the neck part, not on the fingerboard. Okay, so it's getting down there. Okay, we're getting pretty close now. Okay, that's getting very close. I've still got a tiny little gap up here at the top, but it's very, very close. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come up here to this end, and I'm going to use the widest arc. So I've got 4 arcs cut, one at 1 inch, one at 1 1/16, one at 1/8, and 1 3/16. So the 1 3/16 arc is the one I want to use for up here. And I'm going to turn the camera off and get this one done. I'm not doing anything different than I did down here. And once I've got the 2 arcs done, I'll turn the camera back on and we'll start carving the neck. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention is when we're carving this groove up here around the 10th fret, we need to check our thickness. So down here by the nut, our thickness, our total thickness, is 13/16. This depends on how much thicker you want your neck to get as you go up the fingerboard. I've seen some guitar makers, some big companies, make this part of the neck like 1/8 of an inch thicker than this part. I like it to be a little bit thinner. I tend to make the neck up around the 10th fret or so be about 1/16 thicker. So if I'm at 13/16 here, I want to be at 14/16 or 7/8 up here. So if I check my thickness before I have this all done, I can see that I'm at 15/16. So I've got to come down about 1/16 here. To make my groove. Now, I didn't have to go down at all here. Here I do. I have to come down and get that thickness to 7/8 or 14/16. You can leave it thicker if that's what you like, but I have liked that to be just a little bit less. Most of my customers have seemed to like that as well, so that's what I go with. So anyway, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so we've got the both of the grooves carved into the neck, and these may not be perfect yet, but they're very close. And so now the whole goal is to get rid of everything in the middle. And there's a couple of bumps out here on the ends that we're going to need to get rid of as well. So there's several ways to do this. You can use a big file and just start carving, and that works. I've carved many necks doing just exactly that. Another thing that I really like is a spoke shave. And with a spoke shave, you can make a pretty accurate straight carve without worrying about getting too deep in the middle. And that's the biggest problem. You need to be sure that you don't get this carved off too deep in the middle. So you can take several strokes with a file. It's very difficult to keep things straight that way. And so what I want to do after every few strokes is come in with just a flat board, just a sanding board. This has 80 grit sandpaper on it. And after a while, I always want to come in and flatten things back out and make sure that I haven't cut too much of a dip in that middle, and I've got things nice and straight. So whether we're using the spoke shave, which I'm going to use a lot here, or the file, every so often we're going to come in and be sure things are flat. Now you can push or pull a spoke shave, and it works very well both ways. And this is actually quite satisfying to carve this way. Some people will use a draw knife. I've never gotten comfortable with a draw knife, so I don't use it. But I do enjoy the spoke shave very much. So one thing that I like to do is every so often, here I'm going to just put some chalk along this area here, along the whole area, and now hit it with my sanding block just to find out how level things are. And you can see, even though I was using a spoke shave, it's deepest in the middle. It's pretty much clear out here, pretty much clear here, but it's still green in the middle there. So no matter what tool you use, every now and then, I like to come back and make sure everything's level. Now, the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to carve some of this large bump out here off so it's not in the way. So there we go, nice and level again. And I'm just going to continue using the spoke shave here. And I'm going to chalk it again to see how we're doing. So anyway, I'm going to continue doing this for a little while, and I'll just go off camera and keep working here. If anything interesting comes up or any problems arise, I'll put the camera back on and show you what's going on. But this is a relatively straightforward step. You just need to be sure it stays flat in between these two grooves, and that's all we're trying to do. And just slowly carve material away. Don't get into a rush on this step because that usually creates problems. So anyway, I will be back in a little bit. So just to give everybody an update on what's going on, things are going just fine. However, I noticed I'm getting a little bit closer down here than I am over here. So I've got to start carving more on this side. One easy way to do that is just to put your flat board down, hold one side still, and just focus on this side. This will help keep this whole edge flat while you're working on one side of it. So anyway, I'm going to keep going for a while, but I just wanted to give you all that update. We've got this half of the neck pretty much done. It's nice and level. We're all the way up to our grooves on both sides. So next thing we're going to do is turn it around, do the same thing on the other side. No real surprises here. Everything happened just pretty much as we'd expect. And just a lot of sanding and carving. So anyway, not an extremely difficult job, just a lot of work. So anyway, we'll turn it around, get started on the other side, and I'll be back in a little bit. Okay, I've got the main shaft of the neck pretty well carved. It's not quite completely done. You can still see a flat spot over here that I do have to round over some, but I'm going to wait to do that until I've got a little bit more carving done down on this end. as the headstock meets the neck. So we're not going to do that just yet. We're going to come down here and work on the heel. This is a Spanish heel. There are a number of ways to shape a Spanish heel. Some people like to have it rounded over. Some people like to have it kind of come to a sharp point. I kind of like the pointed look myself, so that's what we're going to do. And we're going to do most of this shaping just with a file. This is a rough file that I got from Stu Mack. It's very, very good. It's very coarse and will take a lot of wood off. The best way to carve this is to go in this direction. If you come in the other direction, like over here, you're more likely to open up grain and chip pieces away. So if you go with that grain, you're less likely to have that kind of a problem. So this side of the heel is not quite done. It needs a little bit more shaping, especially over here on this side. But what I'm going to worry most about right now is kind of starting to round this square side over and see if I can bring it to a point down here on this end. So I'm just filing away the biggest bumps over here. That's the stuff that just has to be taken care of. And one thing that I like to do is I'm going to make a line here down the middle. And I want to leave that line alone, so we don't take off too much material there. So this is just a matter of carving. Now, when you get to these bump areas, I've got a nice smooth neck here. As I get close to that, I don't want to keep filing. I'm going to get fairly close to it. And when I've got a small bump, I'm going to use that board and sand that back in. And I'll show that more as I get going. But the same board that I use to smooth out the shaft of the neck, I'm going to use to smooth out this transition here. You don't want to do that with a file. You just want to use the file to get close. I've seen many necks from beginning luthiers that end up with a groove along here where they file this area here and go a little too far, and so it doesn't quite match up with this nice plane that we've got here. So we want to be careful not to go too far. I don't want to get too far ahead on one side. I like to try to keep both sides going so I can keep track of where they are. So this is going to take a little while. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the camera off and I'm just going to keep filing. And as I get to a spot where I'm doing something a little different, I'll turn it back on and we'll go from there. But for a while, we've just got a lot of meat that we've got to carve away here. So be patient. It takes a little while and just keep carving. But don't try to carve that transition between this plane and the heel of the guitar. Don't do that yet. This is the wrong tool for that job. So this is a tool just for removing a lot of wood. And that's all we want to do. So we've got a lot to carve away. This does about the best job of doing that. So I'm going to turn the camera off and work for a little while, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, so I've gone just a little bit farther, not very much, but I moved this this clamp and I put it over here onto the dovetail so I can see the top of my my heel, actually the bottom, but the top from my view. So it's easier now to start getting this top part of the heel. You just can't do it with the clamp sitting up there on top. So one other thing that I wanted to show you is that I brought over this this sanding board. Now this has 80 grit. I just put fresh sandpaper on it, and it really cuts nicely. But this is how you want to make this transition between this bump here on the heel and our nice straight shaft of the neck. And it's got to be done this way. So we can get closer than this. This is still a pretty big bump here. And we can get closer with the file. But as you do get closer, use this. And this will enable you to make that look just perfect as it comes from here up to here. So and I'm holding this other end here. Hold on, I'll move the camera. Let me push it back just a little. There we go. I'm holding this end up with my hand. So I'm keeping my fingers just under it enough so it's just barely off of the wood piece. So I can sand this and it's not at a bad angle. So anyway, I'm going to continue to file more, but that's how we're going to finish up that transition. So I'll be back in a little bit. So I've continued carving on this for just a little while. And a couple things. This has gotten closer now. It's quite a bit closer. And so it's now time to use this tool. And get this portion of this smoothed out. And sometimes it's also good to go ahead and chalk this a little bit. And that way you can see better just how far you've got to go. So you can see here's where it's carved and here's where it's finished. And I don't want to go too deep into this area here. I just want to smooth that out. And I'm trying not to let this side touch. I'm holding it just barely up. So it's getting closer and closer. Almost there. There we are. At least this section here is coming down nicely. Now right over here where we've got this vertical spot here, we're going to have to get rid of a lot of that. And the best way to do it is just to bring that around with a file. And then also with this. So that's pretty close. This vertical area here has got to come down a little bit more, but I'll probably use a little bit finer file. Something like this. And just eliminate that bump. Now I've got a smaller board here that works for some of these areas quite well. And then just a piece of sandpaper. So now I've got to still bring this around more. I'm going to wait to do that for a little while because I want to get this side and I want to take the neck out of this jig. I want to put it on the body, fit exactly where I want the heel to come to and cut it off at exactly the right spot and glue on the heel cap. So then we can finish carving this with the heel cap on. So I like to get this partly started, put on the heel cap, and then finish it up. So I'm going to do a little bit more work, get this side as good as this side is, and then before I finish carving this heel, we'll take this off, get the heel cap on, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to turn the camera off, work on this, and be back in a little bit. Okay, so we're getting ready to try to fit the neck. And all of the final carving is not done, so I haven't gone and done anything off camera. But before we get the heel cap put on and we get all that stuff done, I need to get this final fit done of the neck so we know just how low the neck sits and if everything is looking right. So I want to just get this neck put on. Let's see how things are fitting, and we'll figure out where to go from here. So right now, the neck is going into that slot awfully easily. So I'm pretty sure it's going to need another little shim in there to be sure everything's going down right. But let's see, yeah, it's going all the way down and coming out way easily. So I've got a little shim over here cut, and it's just, it's the size of our dovetail. It's 2 3/4 of an inch and 5/8 of an inch long. So I've got another one cut, and I'm just going to take this. Now this is only 10 thousandths wide. So I'm going to see if that's wide enough to do it and to make the neck fit just perfectly. So I'm pushing it in as best I can, and let's get a couple of clamps on here and see how that does. So I like to put the clamp on each side just to make sure it's got good even clamping. So there we go. And it's definitely sitting up a little bit now, so that's a very good sign. So I'm going to clamp it down, and it goes all the way down, so that's excellent. Now let's see how tight it is. I want to take the clamps off and see if this neck is in there nice and tight. And it is. That's excellent. So that's all looking very good right now. Now what I'm going to do is I've got a little line drawn up here where the bridge is going to go. And this is not our final bridge, by the way. This is just a Martin bridge that I've used to help with alignment. So I'm just sitting it down there. And I've got a straight edge here. This is just a piece of plexiglass, and I use a line that's been scribed down the middle to check the centering and all that kind of thing. But I'm just going to lay it on top of the neck here and see how it looks over our bridge. And right now, that's looking absolutely perfect. It's sitting about a 1/16 of an inch over the top of the bridge, which is just what we want. So I don't have to adjust the neck up and down at all. Let's check it left to right. So I'm going to move the bridge out of the way. Let's line up my little scribe and everything and see where we are with respect to my center line. And I am ever so slightly off to the left side. So I'd say I'm off by under a 1/16 of an inch, but it's still off by a little bit. So we want to fix that. Now, the way that we're going to fix that is this shoulder over here. Oops, got the camera pointing in the wrong direction here. This shoulder over here on this side that matches up from the neck to the side of the guitar is fitting on there just perfectly, as is this side. They look really, really good. But if I need to move the neck slightly to the right, then I need to take a little bit off of this shoulder here on the left side so that that side can move forward a little bit more and push the neck to the right. I hope that explanation makes sense, but that's what's going on. This shoulder over here needs to have just the tiniest little bit shaved off of it so that that edge will move forward a little farther and point the neck to the right. So that's what we're going to do. So now This neck is fitting so nice and tight, it's going to take a little bit of force to get it off, and that's a good thing actually. So I'm just going to give it a few taps here. There it goes. So that's coming off now. So it's this edge here that needs to have just a tiniest little bit taken off of it. So I'm going to move a couple of clamps out of the way here and put a cloth around this guitar, around the neck, so that I can put it into a clamp without damaging anything. We've just spent all that time carving this neck. We don't want to go and put clamp marks in it. So let's protect it. And there it is. So let's move that out of the way. There's our neck. And this shoulder right here is the one that we've got to shave the tiniest little bit off of. And I think I've used the term gnat's ass in here before. Well, that's about how much we have to take off. And I'm just going to go across here with my chisel and just shave off the tiniest amount that I can. And I want this all to be as evenly done as I possibly can do it, because I don't want to be creating any gaps where I get deep in one spot and not deep enough in another. So I think that's pretty close. I'm going to take a small sanding block here and just sand that very briefly here. So let's take another look. That may not have been enough to do much of anything, but I'd rather check now than go too far. So again, I'm going to clamp this down. Clamp it on either side. That's looking good. Okay. And let's check our center line again. It's almost perfect. So let me show you exactly what I'm looking at here. This is just a piece of plexiglass that I've taken and I've marked where the strings, approximately where the strings should be down on this end, with a center line right down the middle. And then down here, I've marked where the strings are, where they come into the bridge up here on this side. So if you can tell, I've got 3 lines etched, 1, 2, 3, with the 2 outer lines being where the strings are, where the low E and the high E are, and the center one being the center of my fingerboard. And so I'm lining this up down here on the end. And okay, I'm within a 30-second. So as long as I'm being picky, let me go take just another tiny little gnat's ass off of that side there. And we'll see if we can't get it just right. A 30-second is about approximately 30 thousandths. It's actually 31.25 thousandths, but 30 is close enough. So let's look back here at this again. And I'm going to do again just what I did last time. I'm just going to take off the tiniest little bit here. And what I'm taking off probably amounts to 1 or 2 thousandths. Okay, that's pretty good all along there. And then again, I'm just going to sand that and be sure that any little unevenness I might have put in gets taken out. Now the thickness of a piece of like cellophane Scotch tape is about 2 thousandths. So I probably didn't take off more than that. Okay, that is looking good. Let's put it back on the guitar and let's see what we got. It's important to know how to do this. And the only way you get to do it, to learn how to do it, is by doing it. But this is how you get a neck to fit right. Sometimes you can do it with sandpaper and pulling paper the way we did when we first started fitting the neck before the fingerboard was on. And sometimes, especially after you've got the fingerboard on, sometimes all you can do is get out a chisel. Fortunately, we didn't have to go very far. Okay. That's all looking good. Let's take this off. Let me get my little straight edge here. Okay, that is right on top of my center line now. So I feel pretty good about that. Just check this one more time. Nothing should have moved in this dimension, so we should be good. And that is looking absolutely perfect. So our fit, left to right, up and down, is looking just like we want. So the reason we did all of this, so the neck is down. Let me give it one more little push just to be sure we've got it all the way. I think we do, but I just want to be sure. Okay, that's all good. So now, let me set this body up here. And here we are. Okay, so you see not all of this is carved yet, but I always like to put my heel cap right about where the purfling line hits the heel. So we're not going to go put purfling on the heel cap, but we're going to try to make it right. This is a white, black, white piece of purfling. So what I want to do is to make a little mark right about where the black line is in the middle. And so I'm just going to make a mark with the chisel just where that line is. And I've got to be able to see that mark. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Right about there. Okay, so I've got 2 marks, and these are as fine a marks as I can make with a chisel edge. I could have gone in and done that with a pencil, but most pencil lines are going to be wider than I want to deal with. I want this to be right on the money. So now I'm going to get out another little jig, and I'm going to cut back this heel so it's just where I want it, and we can glue on the heel cap, and then we can finish carving the heel and the rest of the neck. So I will get out this jig, I'll get it set up, and I'll be back in just a few minutes. Okay, so here is the jig that I was talking about. This jig was developed by Michael Bashkin. Many of you might be familiar with Michael. He's a tremendous luthier. He's got a video on Stuart McDonald where he shows his guitar making techniques. Very nice guy and tremendous guitar maker. Anyway, I saw this jig on his website, and at that time I was trying to look for a better way to cut my heels down so I could put on a heel cap accurately. And this is the best jig I ever saw for doing something like that. So basically, the neck just fits in on this runner here. The heel sticks up, and this level is adjustable. So what we're going to do is those 2 little chisel marks that we made, we have to line up with this surface. And then we'll use this router. And the router bit is set to be almost exactly even with the base. So we'll just put this down and route the level right off. So it's just such a simple, well thought out little jig. But I called Michael when I saw it and said, "This is great, can I copy it?" He said, "Sure." So he also gave me permission to put it in my book. And so some of you may have seen it there. But you just basically put it together and hold the neck in real solidly, because we don't want anything moving around while this router is running. So of all the methods that I've seen to cut a heel cap, this is by far the best I've ever seen. So anyway, let me grab a chisel real quick, and we'll see if we can line this up and get it ready to go. So for right now, the chisel is just going to be an alignment device. So I'm going to try to get this moved up. And see if I can get the level of the chisel just about equal, or exactly equal, with the level of those little marks that I made a few minutes ago. So it was too high and now it's a little bit too low. And it always takes a little while to get things set up. Okay, that looks just about right on this side. Let me check the other side out. Okay, that's just about right. I'm going to get it exactly right, and I'll be right back. Okay, so everything is all set up. It's all tightened, and I've got the angles all right here. I'm going to put on some hearing protection and a mask while I do this, and we'll get going. Okay, there it is. Now, you saw me spin the router around. I wanted to get the last little chunk, which almost always tears out a little piece. I wanted to get that in the middle and have that not happen out on an edge. So that's why I always turn around and I try to finish up close to the middle. And so we can cover that little spot up with the heel cap. So anyway, it's done. We can take this out. I'll turn off the camera, vacuum things up a little bit, and I'll see you back over at the guitar body in a few minutes. Okay, so what I've done here is I put the neck back onto the guitar, turned it over. Our heel lines up just the way I wanted it to, right along the black interior line of our purfling. And I've just taken a piece of Pau Ferro, came straight from the back of the guitar, and I've lined it up here. I had to put a slight angle on this edge so it would match up with this edge of the guitar. And I just traced the heel cap so you can see the tracing I've got just in white pencil around there. So I'm going to go cut this off on the bandsaw. I'm going to cut it off too big, and we'll put it on there and we'll get it glued. So I'll be right back. Okay, so here's the piece. It fits right on there. Everything is looking just fine. And what I've got here is a little pipette full of super glue. And what I'm going to do here is prop this guitar up. See if I can get the camera up at the right angle here. And I am just going to go, without getting too sloppy, I'm just going to put a little bit of super glue right on that edge. I don't want to get too close to the guitar body. I'm just going to put a little bit right there on the forward part of that edge. And that's it for right now. I don't want to spray any accelerator on it or anything like that. Not yet. And I'm going to let that sit there for a while till that glue dries. So I'm going to go away for a while, just let that glue sit and dry. And when I feel pretty confident that it's dry and ready to go, I will take the neck off and complete gluing it all the way around. So I'll be back and show all that to you in a few minutes. But in the meantime, I just want that glue to seep as far as it wants to seep and to dry, and then we'll take the neck off. So I'll be right back. Okay, so here is the neck. I'm going to take it off. Okay. So now the thing that I want to do is let me get that pipette again. And I just want to run more glue all the way around now, both sides. And in here, I got some on that shoulder there. I really don't want that, so I'm going to try to wipe some of that off. That's pretty good. Then just put as much glue in here as it will take. So that's probably about all the glue that this is going to take. And it really should be quite enough. So again, I am not spraying any accelerator yet. I just want this to run as far as it can run, and for as long as it can run, and get this this whole area, get that whole glue joint saturated. So anyway, once that's dry, I will give it a little shot of accelerator and we'll go back to carving. And so that's what we're going to do next as soon as I'm back. So now things are back on my little carving stand, and it's time to finish carving up the heel. And so, like before, I'm just going in the direction of the grain. Okay, so we're kind of down to neck wood now. I'm just trying to bring these sides around where they come up to that pencil line I've got there in the middle.
So we've just brought this around to a point. And I don't want that point to go too far down. We'll probably start rounding it out just down here. But that's basically it. I'm going to spend a little bit of time smoothing this out. But other than that, it's pretty level. Things seem to be fairly even on both sides. And the next little while, I'm just going to be smoothing out things that aren't quite smooth and getting edges. This edge over here on this far side from the camera is a little sharper and straighter. This is more smoothed out, so this is more the way I want it all to look. So I'm just going to keep working and getting things a little smoother. Nothing magic there for the camera to see, so I'm going to work on that. And then in just a little while, I will come down here, and we got some major stuff still to do over on this end of the neck. And so I will show you what we're going to do about that. Okay, so we're going to start carving the headstock as it moves into the shaft of the neck. And these bumps that were left here by our carving the headstock and the neck separately, we want to get rid of now. So I'm going to start. By the way, what I've got here is I made a little piece that will fit into any straight vise, and it will tilt, allowing you to put in an uneven piece. And so I use this all the time. It's no big secret, but this works really well. So if you've got a vise and you need to be able to put something in it that's uneven, just go make this. This is just a couple of pieces of maple I glued together and shaped, and it works really well. So now
I don't know if the camera is showing it or not, but I just drew a couple of white lines on here showing approximately where these two curves have to come in to meet with the neck. And I'm just going to try to be careful and stay as vertical as I can with my most aggressive file, and to start filing this away. I want to be very careful not to hit this fingerboard at all, because this will leave a scar that will be very difficult to remove. So as I get this last little portion closer and get it even, I'm going to use something other than this coarse file. So this is moving along quite nicely, and I think I want to stop with this coarse file on that side anyway, and I'll move over to this side, do the same thing. Okay, and again, I think that's as far as I want to go with this coarse file. So next, I'm going to turn this over and we'll start working the other side. Now, one thing that I want to do is I want to draw a curve, and this curve basically is going to go, it's an arc. So 3 points can define an arc. So one of the points is over here, one is there, and the other is over here. So I want to draw an arc between those 3 points. And I've got a compass here, and I set this up a little bit earlier. Let's see if I can find my point. There we go. Yeah, so, you just randomly adjust the curvature and the point until you find something that works. So there is the curve. And now what I want to do is I want to carve this area and this area away. So this is going to be a very three-dimensional curve, where over here it's vertical and then it comes around to being horizontal up here on the neck. So I'll use a smaller file here to get started. And I just want to come along here. Now, I'm going to have to change this setup here. I need to put my my neck holder back in, and We'll make it look a lot better with this. So, move this over. It'll be obvious why I want to do this in a minute. Okay, so here is why I wanted this set up, because now I can use this method to keep this area straight and have everything blend properly right into the neck. So sometimes just a plain sanding block can do a better job than a file. This is just almost where I want it. Okay, so I'm going to go do exactly the same thing on the other side, and when I've got that done, I'll come back and you can see what everything looks like. Okay, so I've just continued to carve. I've gotten both sides where they're close, but they're not done yet. And so I wanted to give you an idea of just what has to be done. You can see on both sides, I have not gotten all the way up to the pencil line. And you have to do that. So I've made a couple of smaller sanding blocks. These I've had for a while. And I've just put 80 grit sandpaper on the curved side of this one. And we've just got to go back in here and get this area here where it's nice and straight for the fingerboard. And then it curves up. I believe this is called the hyoid area. And that's got to be straight and then curve very nicely into the headstock shape. So I'm just going to take this curved piece here and keep working up into that hyoid area and keep working this curve back to the line. And so it's just one of those things that, you know, it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of patience. And you get there. And now as I look along here, there's still a bump right there that we've got to get rid of and get that transition nice and smooth right into the curve. And then just bring that shape around until we eliminate that, until we eliminate the space and get all the way to the line. That's when we have this thing about ready to go. So I've still got this flat spot here that has to be eliminated as well. So it's just one of the last little things that has to be taken care of. And I could certainly go in with files and do all that kind of thing, but I'm very paranoid about keeping this line straight. And I don't want to carve too deep in an area and create a hollow. So we're just trying to maintain the straight lines here and keep away bumps, but not carve hollow areas that we don't need to. And we may need to turn this over and take a good look at it from the other side as well. But we're getting that space cut down farther and farther. We're almost to our line. And we just got to keep going until we're there. Getting better and better as we go. That's looking better. pull this one out here. So I'm working this side of the flat spot down, and it's getting there. And so anyway, I won't continue to do this on camera, but that's all I'm doing. I'm just trying to get the shape just where I want it. I've pretty much reached the line on this side. This side I've got just a little bit farther to go. So I'm going to turn the neck around and work on that a little bit and continue to bring this curve in here and eliminate the flat spot. Then we're just about ready to go. So I'll be back in a few minutes and we'll go from there. Okay, so we're just about there. Here is the neck. Everything is looking pretty much as I want it to. I just kept sanding on this area here, got the curve right, got a flat spot out. And now I've just been finished sanding. I've started with 150 grit, and I'm going around everything with 150. And once I'm happy with that, I'll go to 220, and that's as far as we need to go. So I think we're about done with the neck, and we'll get started with the next chapter as soon as we can. Anyway, thanks a lot, and I'll see you later. Okay, we've got one last thing to do on the neck here, and I'm going to put on my magnifying glasses. We've got to put in the side dots. So let's come down here and take a look at what we've got. So I've just got the neck sitting in here. It's sitting up high enough where I can look over and see where the frets are. And I've just marked out the first fret. I hope that's visible on the camera, but I've just made a pencil mark where fret number 2 is and where fret number 3 is, because we're going to put our 3rd fret marker right between fret 2 and 3. So now I'm going to get out my little centering ruler and find the center between those two marks, and it's right about here. And then I'm going to turn the ruler sideways and find the halfway point between the top and the bottom of that fingerboard, and it's right about there. So I'm using an awl here to make a mark rather than just a pencil, because with the awl, my little drill here can find that point and drill straight down. So I've got a piece of tape around the tip of my drill bit, so I know how deep to go. You don't want to get these markers put in too deep. I'm just going to be using some mother of pearl dots, 2mm dots, and so I'm just going to drill a little hole here, and that might not be quite deep enough. But if you've got to choose between too deep and too shallow, go too shallow. Because if you drill too deep, you'll never get that dot back out of the hole. And too shallow, you'll just sand it off. So let me get my dots out. Okay, so I've got some dots here laying on the table. I'm just going to grab one, and we're going to put it over here in this hole that we just drilled. And try to get it in there. These are 2mm dots. And so I've got to have a 2mm drill bit to put those in. And so there it is. It's sticking up just very slightly proud. And so here is a little pipette with super glue in it. And I just need a small dot. And that's it. So let me just give it a little shot of accelerator. And that's it. By the way, you don't want to put your pipette of super glue near where you're spraying that accelerator, or it will surely clog up the tip and be useless. So anyway, there's the first one. So I'm going to come along here. I'm going to do fret 3, 5, 7, 9, and I'll do 12. So I'm going to turn the camera off, and I'll turn it back on when we do fret number 12, because 12 gives a lot of people trouble. So I'll show you how we do that one, and then we'll be wrapped up. So we're ready to do number 12 now. And the only difficulty people have with number 12 is that you typically put in 2 dots, and sometimes it's difficult to get the 2 dots lined up just right. So let's see what we got to do here. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to find the center, and so there's the center between my 2 frets, fret 11 and 12. Then I'm going to find the center between each half. So from the middle to fret 11 is about there, and the middle to fret 12 is about there. So that's where I want to put in my 2 frets. So I'm going to mark where these go, and for now I'm going to do this in pencil because I want to be absolutely certain that these 2 marks are as parallel as I can get them. And once I'm happy with that, I will go in and poke them with the awl and drill the holes. So let me remove any other markings I've got here. And I've just got these 2 dots there and there, and hopefully that shows up okay on the camera. I can't really tell from here. So there they are. Those look like they're pretty parallel. And so let me see if I can just get a nice mark and make that first mark kind of light, because if you've got it in the wrong spot, if it's light, you can make another mark next to it and you'll be okay. But those look pretty good. And so now, as long as you've got your marks in the right place and you get a good mark with the awl, the drill is going to follow that directly. So let's drill our first hole here. Gotta find the hole with the drill bit. There it is. Okay, and then here's the second dot. Right there. Let's check it. It's looking pretty good. So I've got the 2 holes drilled, and now I'm just going to go ahead and put in the 2 dots. There's one. And there's the other. Get some glue on those. And we're set. So that's the main idea behind putting in the dots. I'm going to go and put in a couple more, one on 15, probably one on 17, and that'll be it. And that's pretty much it for the neck. So we will be back as we continue. Thank you.